everyone. Give them the little things to get over the line to do what you want them to do, but not necessarily force them. A lot of people don't like being forced to do too much stuff. So it is given them the option, and there is always the mundane tasks within sport that you've got to do. But yeah, I think we try to give them as much variability as possible so it's not monotonous and mundane for them.
And how much time do you spend in explaining to them the why, the importance of this particular exercise or this session, so they get a full understanding of, okay, I get why I'm doing this and I understand how it's going to help me on the field?
I would love it to be a lot more than what it actually is. Unfortunately, in women's sport, we're so time constrained. The athletes are only allowed for the PA to be at the oval for a certain period of time. So we have to do what we can. Ideally, I would spend probably 10, 20 minutes on a certain thing. For instance, the mindfulness. Be it that I run it, I get a little bit more time to explain how important it is, but there's never enough education in this thing. And we sort of had our exit review last week, and a lot of the takeouts were, we probably need to throw in some more education time for the girls. A lot of it was spent on education for coaching and how to do certain skills, but probably not enough on how to, their body, pretty much, their body, their mind, how to get better and why it's important to get better and how it affects their recovery.
Okay, cool. Mate, let's transgress and let's head over to Sensory Imprint, which is a little project you've got on the side.
Yeah.
Can you explain in your words the why behind that and what it actually is?
So the why behind it was I read a couple of books. I read chapter 1, which is the guys from Thank You Water. I read their book, and then I read Let My People Go Surfing, which is written by the owner of Patagonia. And both of those books sort of, I suppose, hit me head on with where the world is right now and where I was myself. And I was like, okay, look, I'm working in sport and doing what I think is chasing to be successful, but not really paying attention to what's going on in the world. So I sort of started to delve into that a little bit more, and I was like, okay, I can donate to all these organizations, and sure, that makes me feel good, like I've ticked the box, I'm now doing something right. Or I can start to create a little bit of a social change that encompasses a few of my good friends, and then also hits a wider audience. So me and two friends, we sat down, we're like, okay, how can we do this? We started up a little company called Sensory Imprint, and of course, taking it from the brain is a synonym for conscious footprint. And we look at sensory obviously being like sensory motor cortex. So how conscious are you about your footprint to the world? And then we pretty much just try and hit that to, promote a couple of things, put a little bit of our views in there, but try not to make them too forceful. People take them on, they don't take them on. And then ultimately we sell shirts that are made from 100% organic cotton in India, printed in Australia with organic dyes, and then we donate 50% of the profits to not-for-profit organisations at the moment in Victoria, but the plan is to get a few different designs going to be able to hit a few more Australia-wide. And
I'd love to know, a lot of people have I love the concept that a lot of people have that idea but never actually bring it to life. Just a really simple idea, but how much work has it taken to actually get that to a stage where there's t-shirts that can be sold?
Yeah, it's taken a while. Like the initial start was really slow. Like it was three of us just sitting down in Jan Juck, just having a couple of beers, talking about it, and thinking we all love music and we all have the passion for what a lot of the bands we listen to are discussing. So let's sort of start to put it in place. So that was a good 3 months of just catching up and going, what can we think of a name? What can we think of a logo? And once we got that sorted, it was probably another 3 months. So we're probably looking at 6 months before we actually go, yep, let's get some shirts together. Let's put that together. And we've only really done 2 or 3 orders of shirts. We've joined up with a really good cafe down in Aries, Onda Food House, that sell a lot of vegan and vegetarian food. They pretty much follow our ideas and our sort of mentality. So it's been probably coming up a year project already. And as I said, we're not really there for the money. Like we donate 50% of it. We pretty much, the profits we make that we don't donate, we put back into buying more shirts. So it's definitely a little side project, and the ultimate goal from it was to make prints with the photos we put together and use some of the slogans that some of the bands we listen to down the bottom. But I figured let's go with shirts first. It's a little bit easier to sort of get a market than people have no idea who some of the bands I listen to are, so they're not going to buy it anyway.
Okay. Yeah, well, I think that's important. What are you listening to at the moment?
That varies. It's generally like punk, hardcore. I suppose you can say like death metal, which sounds a little bit weird that stuff may have influenced me, but a lot of it is very environmental, very up to date. It's pretty much people singing about what their views are. That's why I like it so much.
And I think people don't take the time to do that, to actually listen to the lyrics. And you were talking to me the other day about just when you actually do take the time to listen to the lyrics, just the depth and meaning that a lot of these do have around environmental concerns and society as it is right now.
Yeah, it's actually really... I find it hard on our Sensory Imprint page to not always put up the negative lyrics, because that's what a lot of them are. But a lot of them sort of get me thinking, like... there's a band I listen to from Sydney called Thy Art Is Murder. And yes, it is heavy, but one of their lines is, we are nothing more than a casualty of a failed existence. And you think about that, you're like, that's really heavy, like that's pretty deep. But then you think about it, you're like, well, the state of where the world is going right now, that's probably pretty true. Yeah. So stuff like that, and there's plenty of other bands that do a lot of similar things, not always that sort of deep and make you think about it. Some of them are a lot more... about like over Australia, there's a couple of bands from Adelaide that like Crisis Alert, Homesick, like all these sort of bands that are really sort of starting to push some stuff about like sort of Aboriginal and the Australia 26th. So yeah, it's all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, mate, I'm 100% with you, and I think we, as society, we don't want to go into the depths of some of the lyrics or some of the words, because we want to live at that surface level life where everything's still okay and there's no problem with the environment and there's no such thing as global warming, because we want to just again get back to that easy life that doesn't want to take too much thinking and let alone action.
Yeah, I think action is the big word there, and if we just keep going, we're already at I think we're already 2 degrees warmer than where we needed to be. And if you look at any of the charts, if you ever watch Inconvenient Truth, like, as much as whether you believe the data or not, we're still progressing upwards to hotter. So action is something that has to happen. But then for action to happen, as you said, people need to take accountability for what they're already doing. They need to change what they're doing, and they need to stop driving their really expensive Mercedes. They need to stop buying clothes all the time that are getting produced in third world countries for $0 for zero pay or anything like that. Like it's a never ending thing, but it becomes action, which is, yeah, at the forefront of everyone's mind. But they sort of throw their hand in and go, oh, yeah, like I look into global warming, I could change, but then they go, oh, instead, there's this barrier, there's this barrier, this barrier, this barrier. And if you break all those down, all those barriers are just them going, oh, it's in the too hard basket.
Yeah, well, it's like, awareness without action is ignorance.
Yeah.
Which, and people don't want to be thought of as ignorant. But, where I sort of sit is that the first space is really creating the awareness. With awareness comes acceptance, and then from acceptance can come change. And acceptance, when I talk about that, is acceptance of the reality of where we are right now and the reality of where that person is right now. So that becomes really important. From there, you can move on to create the change.
Yep, and I think that's why Sensory has been something that's quite good, because it's me and my two mates being able to put our views out, but not necessarily be super forceful in someone's face. We just put a couple of things out, even might be 1 or 2 lines, and they go, okay, yeah, we're teaching them, going, okay, this is a little bit different, this is something I can possibly change, and then, as you said, you put it in their face and they can make a decision.
Do you ever have the chats on the Sensory with your friends about that sort of, and I do this myself, it's like, where do you want to see it? Do you want to go like extreme and just call it how you really see it and not sort of worry about the keeping it nice for everyone to accept it, or do you keep it nice and keep it relatable to everyone because you're going to get a broader audience, and that way you can get to more people? Because if you go too far the other way, you limit it. But then you see some guys like, I follow a guy called James Aspey who he's got over 120,000 followers. He's a plant-based and an animal protester, and he's right in everyone's face, but he's got a big following.
Yeah, I don't actually follow James, but my 2 friends do, so I do know a fair bit about him. And it is a good question. Like, we actually sit down to the Sensory guys, and it's generally over a couple of Captain Morgans. We go, do we just do this and just throw our views straight out in everyone's face. And I don't really know yet. We're sort of still fence sitters, I suppose, with that. So we're keeping it nice and, keeping it because we're still trying to get a couple people to buy in, and therefore we can donate their purchase. So it is hard. I don't really know which direction we will end up going. Maybe I'll just start another t-shirt company where I can just be, really in people's face and tell them what I really think. But
and then you got this. Then you're carrying this thing of you got one that's not true to your real self, and then you got this other one that is, and it's like that's a challenge within itself.
Yeah.
And it's like it's the challenge that you get as well when you're like, do you post on Instagram and do you do a podcast when you think that less device use is better, but then if you go off devices completely, then how do you actually get your message across to anyone because you're isolated in the woods somewhere and you've got no devices, but no one's ever going to know what you've got to say. So there's this just trying to hold that tension between what's good and what's not. I find that I battle with that.
Oh, I definitely do as well. It is the balance. I spent the weekend down at Stevenson's Falls and there's no reception down there, so it was amazing. But then you come back and you're like, I have no idea what's going on in the world, or like something really bad could have happened, and I have absolutely no idea. So it is finding that balance to be able to put your views out there and reach people that probably need that little push to change, or probably haven't thought about some of the stuff that you're saying, and some of the stuff that you post I think is important as well. They probably haven't really thought about being mindful or spending more time with their kids or switching off a little bit more. So it's definitely finding the balance of both, which if you completely distract from one, then you fall out of technology. And unfortunately, we live in a technology-filled world. So you've got to keep working with it and be, as, I suppose, from my point of view, be as minimal as you can with the technology that you need to use.
Yeah, whenever I do a coaching session or presenting to a group, I just use the analogy of make sure that you're in control of your technology, that your technology is not in control of you, which is around the consciousness of use and what you're doing, and not just unconsciously trolling and just looking at crap all day, basically.
It's very easy to do, unfortunately. But as you said, you've got to be conscious of that. Because we all fall into the habit where you're like, I just want to switch off for a minute, and you just end up just doing nothing on Instagram or Facebook. But if you just all of a sudden click and you're like, okay, I'm back. Now I'm conscious. What am I doing?
Yeah, and it blows my mind that it's, somewhere in the US, Apple are creating something that in 3 years' time 3 to 5 years' time will decide how we spend 50% of our time. And they've got that power that they'll decide. We actually don't decide because of the dependency we've got on our phones, that we'll spend 6 to 10 hours a day on our phones, and then they'll decide how we spend the next 6 to 10 hours to 12 hours on whatever the new device is that they decide to bring out. That's
pretty interesting. I haven't looked at anything to do with that, but I don't really like the sounds of it.
Well, it's just, we think we've got the choice, but do we have the choice because they're deciding? Like they'll decide through the technology where our time and energy goes.
I think you look at a lot of things, and with a lot of that stuff, whether it's going off grid, whether it's looking at the environment, whether it's deciding what you do or what you eat or how conscious you are, it's that a revolution almost starts at the bottom. And that's from Yvonne from Patagonia. That's pretty much it's a phrase that he uses. And if we don't think about that revolution starting at the bottom, whether it's me making a decision of myself, then nothing's going to change. If I just keep going with what all these big businesses that make billions and millions of dollars say, then I'm just going to fall into the trap of doing it all the time.
Yeah, mate, I don't think there's not a golden ticket that's going to change this. It's everyone's putting in to do their bit. And I was listening to a really good podcast the other day where it's like, it's not about legislation. It's not about someone writing a new framework for how we've got to live. It's starting with, using a reusable coffee cup. It's starting with a veggie garden, putting some solar on your roof. It's you doing that. Because if you make the choice to do that, they're going to change around you. If everyone's just decided to put solar on, there's no more gas and there's no more, electricity.
Yeah, agreed. It comes down to we've got to do it. But, if we, the devil's advocate, I suppose, and is my dad talking here. If we do all go solar, what happens if something goes wrong there? Do we run out of power and all that other stuff? So I think it's it's finding the right line and making sure that we